To save the Cape, we need to change the Cape. Those are the words of the Dean of the Riccardi College of Business at Bridgewater State University as he addressed the Barnstable Economic Development Commission yesterday. We have details on his presentation on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, August 26th, 2015. I'm Sarah Mannel. Dr. Elmore Alexander, the Dean of the Riccardi College of Business at Bridgewater State University, says to grow the Cape's economy, changes must be made. Alexander addressed the Barnstable Economic Development Commission yesterday. He says right now the Cape's economy is like the perfect storm.
The elements that I see in terms of that perfect storm are fourfold. There's the issue of the aging population here. There's the issue of declining job base that is geared currently to seasonal and service jobs. There's a lack of an infrastructure to support economic growth. And there's, I would argue, a mixed commitment to economic growth on the Cape. And how you sort those things out, is certainly going to determine where things go forward, but it also is an issue of where your sensibilities are and where the sensibilities of the Cape are. And I'm not going to suggest that the Cape be scrapped, but I am going to suggest that there's some serious challenges out there.
Alexander went into detail about the most important issues that prevent economic growth here on the Cape.
What about these issues? Aging population, you know these things. The decline of the 22 to 44 age group has been dramatic. The median age of the Cape is 50 years old. Nationally, that's 40. This is an old place. According to that Dukakis poll, 47% of the folks in that 44 to 22 to 44 age group are considering leaving the Cape, and it all got brought together a couple of weeks ago in that Globe magazine article that sounded not so good. So you know this piece of it. The second piece that is there is the job base. You've got a decline in population that is dramatic, and over 50% of the employment is tied up in the seasonal retail accommodation, which are low paying and career limited. As he said in that article, not much of a good reason to stay. The infrastructure issues are critical. Housing, he talks about that in the article, is expensive. The house you were talking about selling is way below the median price of that. And yes, that's why something of that goes so quickly, because there's not that much available. Transportation, huge challenge, and you know about that. Wastewater treatment may be the focal point of all the problems, because you can't to solve all the other problems because of wastewater treatment issues. And you know this, you're sitting on top of essentially a continuous aquifer on a sandbar, and that is a tremendously limiting factor. The broadband issue. The fiber is there, but getting from the fiber to places is a challenge. I have friends in Orleans. I could not do business out of my friend's house in Orleans because you cannot get either cell service or high-speed internet access there. Could not run a business that I could see out of there. And you know, the reliability, the economics of electricity on the Cape is certainly another challenge that goes with it. Finally, I would argue, I own it, outsider from Metro West back in Boston. I'm not sure that the public wants to to grow the economy. Clearly, the zoning and regulations make that piece of it very, very difficult. I've watched my friends over the last few years go through that kind of thing. And frankly, I've seen the same thing in my town of Sherburne. If you know anything about Sherburne and Metro West, it is a very, very similar thing. It's been 10 years since we built a new house in the town of Sherburne. There's one going up right now, but it tore down a house that was already there. It is a challenge to get those things through. And finally, I would argue there is a lack of a comprehensive development plan. There are pieces of that. I'll talk about some of the pieces that are there, but I don't see any point at which people are all in terms of something, and there's agreement in terms of what that might be.